Awesome. Well, today we have with me a wonderful guest, Kirsten D. Samuel, and I help a lot of men on the husband side of the marriage, and she helps a lot of women on the wife side of the marriage when pornography or sexual integrity is of the topic. So I'm super excited to have her on here because I can speak to a lot of men, but then they're like, whoa, what about my wife? And I think Kirsten can talk to that so wonderfully. So, anyways, hi, Kirsten. How are you doing?
Hi, Fields. It's great to be with you. I'm doing great. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Absolutely. I'm glad to have you here. I'm going to read just a quick thing about Kirsten D. Samuels. She is a Christ Center coach who helps women heal from the devastation of a spouse's porn use and rediscover peace, confidence, and hope in Christ. She and her husband, Dave, thank God that he redeemed their brokenness and gave them a brand new marriage. Kristen's story of God's redemption has been featured on Focus on the Family daily broadcast. Chris Fabry live. Is that right? Is that how you said the name?
Favory.
Okay.
Favory.
On Moody Radio Network and other relationship and recovery podcasts. To learn more about her and her message of truth and hope, go to kirstendsamuel.com and we'll have that link down low. And before we get too far into this, I love to, she has a few things that she wants to give away and just bless and put into your marriage. One of the things is download of 5 awful things porn does to your marriage. A
Mhm.
great resource. We're going to have that link down below. But also, she has a book and she's willing to kind of share the ebook with you all. Can you tell us a little bit about your book and
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Well, the book it's a memoir. It's choosing a way out when the bottom isn't the bottom. And this is our story of how God came in and redeemed the hot mess that we were in. And so what I have for you is a PDF version of it. It's a free download if you're interested in a copy of it. And Fields will have the link again in the show notes for you.
Yeah, awesome. Well, cool. I want to really start this off of how women and men are really different, and you deal with the women's perspective and their experience every day. What does the wife go through when she finds out that her husband is looking at pornography?
That is such a great question. Believe it or not, the woman feels like you have committed adultery. It is one of the most devastating things that she can learn. She feels worthless. She feels thrown away. She feels ugly. She feels like she has failed in her marriage. And she feels unworthy. She feels discarded. Like I'm not enough. You add all of the not enoughs in there, and that's exactly what she feels. And I described it as if my husband had taken a dagger and shoved it in my heart and kept turning it. The pain was indescribable to me.
Yeah. So when this happens, how does a wife's healing timeline typically differ from a husband's recovery timeline?
That is again such a great question, and something that is really hard for men and women to understand because typically or often, by the time the man comes clean, reveals that he's been struggling, he's probably found something to help him, or he's already had to talk about it and kind of come clean about it, and he feels this great sense of relief, like, okay, it's out there in the open, and there's hope. I can deal with it. Well, the woman is just hearing it for the first time, many times. She's maybe seen some warning signs, but she didn't put them together yet. And so for her, she's like, and by the time I know when my husband told me, it was like, I feel horrible about this, but he was already moving down a path, and I'm like, I felt like I was miles behind him. And so I think what's important for men to understand for a woman's journey is that psychologists tell us, and people who've been kind of tracking this, that it takes 2 to 5 years for a woman to recover. And that's if she gets help. And that's when she starts to, so it's not a quick process. And her process of recovery is very different from her husband's. And I tell women that all the time. You have to understand your husband's recovery is different from yours, but they're both critical and they're both vital.
Yeah. Wow, I didn't know. I don't think even we have talked about that was
Yeah.
the timeline of healing for women. I'm assuming that's for her to feel safe again, for her to establish trust. Is that what goes into it?
Yeah, to really get beyond the trauma of the betrayal and the in the recovery process to feel like she's got her feet underneath her. I know for me, that initial period was about 18 months to 2 years, but I didn't really feel solid and secure with Dave for another couple to 3 years. So, I fit that timeline. I maybe wasn't at 5 years, maybe a little bit shorter, but I was in that when I heard that statistic, and it's from Dr. Eddie Cappucci, I think is his last name. I never say it right. So I'm sorry, Dr. Dr. Eddie, but I think that was where I was listening to him as he was talking about it. And when he gave that 2 to 5 years, I was like, wow. But then I thought about my recovery, and that's where it was.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we've kind of talked about when a husband kind of reveals this and the wife goes through all these feelings and stuff, and kind of like as this goes down the road, maybe he relapses again and stuff. How can the husband respond when she kind of expresses anger and sadness about his past choices or his current choices?
Yeah, and, that's hard. It's really hard, and my husband has had a relapse, and so we've walked through some of this. Um, the initial response, the very human response is to defend yourself, and that's the very worst thing you can do. She's expressing to the fact that she's even telling you is she's risking herself. She's being vulnerable to you and saying, "This is how I feel. This is what's going on." And it's really hard to be the one that's receiving that anger and that hurt. And so, having been on the other side of that in other situations, I understand that. But own what you've done. Just own it. Say, I did that and I've hurt you. And I am so sorry. But if you try to justify the behavior, that just makes it worse. That again, that you're turning that dagger in the heart. She is She is devastated. She wants to believe in you. Sticking out in the marriage, she wants to believe in you. And especially if you've got a foundation of Jesus Christ in your marriage, if you're both have claimed a relationship with Jesus Christ and you're hanging on with everything you've got, being vulnerable with her. And I want to explain the difference between transparency and vulnerability. Okay. We always say that, I'm transparent. You can ask me any question you want. I'm transparent. And that's great because it talks about words, actions, and stuff like that. But vulnerability is the heart. Vulnerability is the feelings. It's the part of you that you don't want anybody to see. And so when you're being in order to build a strong relationship, we have to go to vulnerability.
Yeah.
And so the worst thing you can do is to try to defend yourself. The worst thing you can do is tell her a snippet of what happened. Like, well, I only did this. And then sometime later, a little bit more comes out. If there's been an issue, it's better to say, I know when my husband had a relapse, he didn't tell me immediately, and I was okay with that. I'm gonna tell you why. Because what he did was he called his accountability partners. He told them what happened. They met with him. They helped him work through what had happened and what had triggered him and how he was going to not get in that same position again. And then they walked through, okay, here's what you're going to do. Here's what we're going to do. And then, so when he came and told me what had happened, he already had that recovery plan in place. He already knew what he had done. He was able to lay the whole thing out in front of me, which actually calmed me down. But he owned it. He didn't make excuses for it.
Man, that's beautiful. You hit so many powerful things there. I would love to kind of piggyback on this of talking about a full disclosure because I'm assuming that he had kind of like a full disclosure with you and then this was kind of like after the fact and stuff. But could we jump into maybe only bits and pieces have been shared or never disclosure has happened? How do you suggest when and how do you suggest a husband to go about full disclosure? Because we've talked about this before, and I like your unique way of handling it.
Yeah, I am one who believes that the woman needs to have the information she needs to have. Now, that depends on the woman, so I wanna qualify that there, okay? Because not every woman wants to know the same amount of information. I have clients who they wanna know the nitty-gritty details, and then I have other clients who wanna know the broad strokes, okay? So it's very important that there is disclosure, and again, it needs to be complete, but it needs to be done with a third party professional. And the reason for that is protection for both of you. It's a safety net for both of you because in disclosure, a lot of times there will be very strong emotions that come from both parties, whether that is shame and regret and just agony over what the husband in this case has been doing, or with a woman, it could be anger, it could be rage, it could just be extreme agony on her part on hearing what's been done because again now she feels worthless. She feels completely betrayed, like the only person she thought she could trust has just blown it, has just shattered that trust. So that third party is able to provide the bumper pads, so to speak, to help you go through it. And the timing of this, again, I would lean into I firmly believe that every couple who is dealing with betrayal trauma needs to have intensive marriage counseling. Okay. And I'm a coach and I'm saying counseling. So I want you to get the difference there. I believe that they need to have intensive marriage counseling. I believe that they need marriage coaching to move forward. But they need to have marriage counseling to deal with that immediate sense of betrayal. And I think the counselor is really the best one to go through that with them. Now, Dave and I have done discoveries with our coaching clients because they didn't were not able to do it with their counselor for whatever reason. As far as the timing, I know that you say it's at least 6 months, and that's a great thing. I don't have a timeline for that because I'm basing it on what happens with that counselor and trusting the counselor to do that.
Yeah. And what are your thoughts on we've talked about the kind of recovery path and timeline. What are your thoughts on like the husband getting help and the wife getting help and then both getting help? So individual help and kind of together or couple help.
Yeah. Both are necessary. Because the husband's recovery is completely different than the wife's recovery. He's dealing as the one who is the betrayer, as the one who is using pornography in this case, or inappropriate sexual behavior as medication of choice for whatever that deep wound is in him. The wife is dealing with the shock and the aftermath and what I call the aftershocks of that discovery, and in that process of recovery for her, there's going to be things that will come up. My clients tell me this all the time, and I was shocked at the things that came up in my life as a result of having to deal with the trauma. So I think they need to be going on congruently. They're not going to be on the same timeline. So, and you have to understand that. You each have to understand that he's going to grow in this area and recover in this area faster. And then maybe you're gonna be faster in this area and lagging behind. And the other thing I think that's really important for people to understand in recovery is it's not linear. It's not a straight line. It's not, let me give you a checklist and you're gonna work through this and you're gonna go all the way through it. It is not. It's like grief because grief is a huge part of this. There's been a betrayal, there's been a rift, a tearing apart of the relationship. And so grief is a huge part of this. And anybody who's been through grief at any period and at any level understands that you'll be going along fine and you'll progress through. You're into the acceptance stage, and then all of a sudden you're way back at denial. And you've gotta deal with that. And that's recovery. That's what I've discovered even in my own recovery. There are times when even today, even now, something will happen and I will find myself falling back, and it's like, "No, I now have the tools, I know how to move forward, but it's okay." And so many women ask me, "Just tell me what to do. Just tell me what to do." It's that checklist mentality. And I said, "I can't give that to you. I can tell you what the pieces are, but how they're going to flesh out in your recovery is individual to you." And it's the same thing for the men, I believe.
Yeah. I think a large aspect of that too is because we each have wounds. Normally, the man is looking at these things because of some sort of wound in his life. And for the spouse, for the wife, it may either create a wound, and it may trigger other wounds that have been in your past. And both of those wounds are unique to that person.
Yeah.
Both of those wounds have to be uncovered, and both of those wounds have to heal. And so
Mhm.
that's why I think, or I agree with you, of there needs to be this individual pathway of healing, and restoration too. And then also, I love what you say of also healing as a couple. But yeah, those are,
Right.
um, the individual paths are completely different. So,
Right. And our instincts are to heal the relationship first,
mm,
but we can't do that.
yeah, right.
We have to heal individually. And as we heal individually, and especially in the case where both of you again claim a relationship with Jesus Christ, you have to heal vertically
Mm,
first because the relationship with the Father has been broken. And we have to heal that. So if you picture a relationship as a triangle and God is at the pinnacle, and as you're both healing individually, you're getting closer to God. When you first start out, and then this is the horizontal plane here, is the relationship. The distance between the two of you, especially when it's broken, is pretty far. But as you both work on the vertical relationship and your individual healing, the distance gets narrower. And then we can start working on the horizontal plane.
it's beautiful. Yeah. Wonderful. So, let's talk about working on that kind of horizontal plane. What are some ways for a man, to start building that trust again, or rebuilding the relationships? What are some things that he can do, some steps that he can just take on his part?
Well, the first one is the disclosure. We think that we are being loving when we don't tell the truth.
Mm,
That, well, if I told her everything, she'd leave and walk out the door. If you don't tell her everything, she could leave and walk out the door. Because every time you let something fall or every time you drop something, it's like we're back at square one. So that disclosure piece is huge and it has to happen. The second thing is commit to telling the truth all the time.
mm,
Now that means that I'm going to practice integrity in every area of my life, not just sexually, but I'm practicing integrity emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically, financially, relationally, everything. That's huge. And we both have to commit to that kind of integrity to begin to have a brand new marriage. And again, I use the term brand new marriage, which my husband actually coined, and I have stolen it, but I will give him credit. Because you can't go back to the marriage you had. The marriage you had's broken. That's how you got to where you are today. It's built on broken principles. But God calls us to be holy like he is holy. But he calls us to do that, telling us that he's the one who's going to make us holy. So it's not we're not responsible to be holy. We're responsible to draw near to him to become more like Jesus. Well, in the becoming more like Jesus, one of those things is honesty. So if you said that you're going to be home or I'm going to call you when I'm leaving work, I will call you before I'm going to leave work and head home. And you don't do that, you've broken trust. So if you say you're going to do something, do it. Be a student of your wife. How can you serve her right now, even though she can't stand you because she's so hurt and she's so angry? How can you show her love in a way that doesn't use words? Because words right now can be cheap if they're not backed up with actions. In Worthy of Our Trust by Stephen Arterburn and Jason Matinkus, they have in there something called the 5-minute rule. Okay. And I love this because it's so simple and it's so easy to do. And that is, if your wife calls you or sends you a text message, you promise to respond to her within 5 minutes.
I love it. Yeah.
And whether it and it might be okay, and the guy and I can hear the guys right now saying, "Well, what if I'm on a business meeting?" Okay. You can still say, "Excuse me for just a moment," because your wife is your first human relationship.
Yep.
And let's get that right.
Yep.
But you can immediately say, "Give me just one moment." And you can send a text message saying, "Hey, I'm in a meeting. Meeting's supposed to get done at this time. I'll call you then." That is still the 5-minute rule because you have responded. Now, wives, it's the flip side for you too. If your husband texts you, respond. If you can't pick up or if he calls and you can't pick up, you can send a quick text message. A lot of phones right now have those, you can send a text message and they're already pre-programmed. Just click that right away and at least you have the knowledge that I'm not being blown off, right? So I love that one.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing is, again, start to date her. You dated her originally, but date her intentionally. I remember one of the things that my husband did, and he does not spend money frivolously. Okay, so I'm going to set this up. But he walked in one day with a bouquet of flowers after we were in the midst of hell. And I looked at him like, "What was that for?" And he said, "Because I know you love flowers and I love you." And he just gave them to me. Now, if your track record in the past, because of your behavior, is that every time you screwed up, you brought flowers, don't do it. Okay, I'm just going to tell you right now because she's immediately going to associate that with, oh, every time he screws up, he brings me flowers. But what can you do? Do the dishes, clean up the kitchen, put the kids to bed without her asking you, do the laundry, clean the toilet. What are things that you can do that show her you're paying attention to her? Very practical, very simple. And probably one of the most powerful things you can do is to verbally pray over your wife and pray for her. I say that last, but it is the most important. And do it without her asking. But but show her. We build trust in practical ways, not by our words.
Man, I hope you're, like, taking tons of notes right now because this is absolutely phenomenal, and I think if you, as men, we can
Hmm.
sum this up, is we are being crazy intentional. Like, this is no like, that you cannot go neutral, you cannot go passive. Like, if you 1, there's hope. But 2, in that hope, you go on full steam ahead pursuing your wife. Full steam ahead of going over and above to show her trust, to show her that there's connection, to show her that she is a priority to you. And these examples and suggestions that Kirsten just gave were absolutely phenomenal. Don't wait a day to implement these things. Start saying, what can I do today? Because those were phenomenal. Thank you so much, Kristen.
Yeah, yeah.
I love it. So, let's see, how can, on the wife's side, I or I deal with a lot of men, and like you referenced this earlier, is we're getting help. Like we finally have men around us. We have somebody to talk to. What can the wife do while the man is getting help?
Get help.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Let's talk about what you do. How do you support women in this time of their husband's recovery?
what I do is coach women through this recovery period. And I have a couple ways that I do it. One is one-on-one for women who just really prefer that very very personal, very hands-on, very structured for them. I do that one-on-one. My sessions are 60 minutes long every 2 weeks, and I tell women it's a minimum of 6 months of coaching. That doesn't mean at 6 months you're going to be healed, but you're going to see difference from when you started to where you are today. The other thing I do have is a masterclass that I will be starting a new one. I'm just ending one now. I'm starting a new one in January. And that is a 12-week class. That is a group session. Plus, you get 3 sessions with me one on one throughout that. And so that starts in the end of late January, January 20th, I believe is when we start. We meet weekly for 1 hour. You have assignments you're gonna work on. You have workbooks. You have other, resources that I give you, but that is more structured. That's more me teaching, and then I'm group coaching a little bit on the side, but then you get those 3 what I call power sessions where you can meet with me one on one and we'll dive in on like something that we've been talking about. And you're like, I am stuck here. Like, I cannot forgive to save my life. I don't know how to walk out forgiveness. I don't know what that looks like. And we'll dive into that. And then, of course, after even the master class, then you have an option to continue coaching with me. And there's several different ways that you can do that. You are not going to recover on your own, ladies. I'm just going to tell you that right now. I've had women come to me 15 years after their husband disclosed, and they're still stuck in anger. And they're like, I'm so tired of this. I don't know what to do. I am destroying my marriage because I cannot get over my anger. I want to tell you right now the best thing I did when Dave told me about his struggle was the immediate phone call I made and said, I need help. Because I was so devastated, I had nowhere to go, I didn't know who to talk to about it, I just didn't know, and the best thing I did was that phone call, and immediately started a path of my own recovery, and so I want you to get help. It doesn't have to be me. There are some others that do this, but it does need to be someone who understands betrayal trauma, not just anyone. Counselors are great. And even if you go to a counselor, that's awesome. But if you can go to a counselor who deals with betrayal trauma, you're going to get a much better experience. So you just have to get help. The second thing is you've got to be patient with this process. This didn't happen overnight. His struggle has probably been going on for years. Very rarely does a man within a couple of months say, oh, I've got this problem. It's been going on for years. So it's not going to fix itself in 2 weeks. And you have to deal with whatever it is for you. As Fields mentioned earlier, in the recovery process, a lot of other wounds start to open. They reveal themselves, which is God's grace because now you're in a place where you've got the support that you need to go through this. So be prepared for that. It's normal. You're not crazy. You're not abnormal. You're not the unicorn in this situation. This is very normal in the recovery process. The more you are willing to push through that pain, to sit in it, and to work through it with the Lord's help and with the help of a coach or counselor, the more you really are going to experience true healing and freedom. You get to become the woman that God has created you to be, and you can freely enter into this brand new marriage relationship with your husband in a way that you can't do if you don't get the help.
It's beautiful. Again, we're going for not to get your old relationship back, but to get a completely transformed relationship.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So if somebody wanted to just talk to you, what would be the best way to kind of reach out to you or get connected with you?
Absolutely, it's really easy. Go to my website, kirstensamuel.com, and that's Kirsten, D as in Diane, Samuel, Samuel.com. Right on the homepage, it says complimentary session. Click it. It's a free 30-minute session. In that session, you and I dive into the part of your story that we can. Obviously, we can't go everywhere, but I will help you figure out what your next steps are, and we'll lay out a plan on what does this look like? How does this fit in your schedule and in your budget?
Yeah, that's awesome. And likewise for men who, if you're listening to this and you're the one going through this journey, if you need help, my website is establishdominion.com. On there, I also have a Calendly link. Book a time with me. I'd love to dive into your story and also kind of like figure out what's the best path forward for you in sexual integrity and really rebuilding your marriage. So I love it because we help the same scenario. You're just on the wife's side, I'm on the husband's side, and it's awesome. So also I want to reemphasize the two links that we have below for freebies that Kirsten has is five awesome or awesome five awful things that porn does to your marriage, and then the PDF version of her book Choosing a Way Out, really hearing her story. And I think that book really sheds hope on what is possible in restoration in a marriage. So
Mhm.
that's wonderful. But again, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your just wisdom and insight. And ultimately, thank you for helping women heal through this. The ultimate thing is we need unity, especially as
Mhm.
Christians. When we have unity, we're unstoppable, and the devil wants to come and cause division anywhere he can. And this is normally one of the biggest dividers of family. So thank you for helping with the restoration and building unity in marriages.
Thank you, Fields. It's been my privilege.